71-year-old Curtis Reeves, a former police captain from Tampa, Florida, is described by his neighbors as a friendly Christian and loving grandfather. On January 13, 2014, he and his wife, Vivian, made a last-minute decision to travel to a movie theater in Wesley Chapel to attend a matinee screening of Mark Wahlberg's movie Lone Survivor. They bought popcorn and drinks, visited the restroom, and entered the theater. Vivian noticed that a man, Chad Oulson, who was seeing the movie with his wife, Nicole, had his phone out and that the screen was lit up. They didn't think much of it as the previews hadn't started yet. When the lights dimmed, Oulson was still using his phone. Reeves leaned over and asked Oulson to put his phone away. Oulson loudly refused, saying that he was texting his daughter, and obscenities were exchanged between the two men. Reeves told his wife that he was going to get the manager, and he briefly left the theater. When he returned, Oulson turned to Reeves saying, "You told on me. Who do you think you are?" Witnesses would later state that they saw Oulson throw a box of popcorn at Reeves. The two men got out of their seats and a heated argument broke out, with the two men raising their voices enough to draw the attention of fellow moviegoers. During the argument, Oulson lashed out at Reeves with an unidentified object, striking him in the face. This was the last straw for Reeves, and he pulled out his firearm, fired at Oulson, striking him in the chest, and Nicole was wounded in her hand as she tried to protect her husband, but didn't sustain any other injuries. A bystander performed CPR on Oulson, but he would ultimately pass away. Reeves was charged with second-degree murder. Number 4. In 1975, 20-year-old John Hinckley Jr. had aspirations of becoming a songwriter, and he moved to Los Angeles to pursue his career. He quickly found out that it was much harder than he expected, and had to turn to his parents for financial help, writing to them about his struggles. In his letters, he did, however, tell them of his girlfriend, Lynn Collins, who brought at least some joy to his life, but they would later learn that he had, in fact, never had a girlfriend, and that he had fabricated the story. By 1976, he'd moved back to his parents' home, and he began buying weapons, spending a lot of time practicing with them. By this stage, he had become emotionally unstable, and he was prescribed antidepressants and tranquilizers to help him cope. During this time, Hinckley watched the movie Taxi Driver, which starred Robert De Niro and Jodie Foster, and he instantly became obsessed with the actress. When Foster moved to Connecticut to attend Yale University, he relocated to New Haven so that he could stalk her. He would write poems to her, which he would slip under her door, and would continually phone her and leave messages for her. When this failed to get her attention, he decided that he needed to assassinate President Jimmy Carter, believing that this would cause Foster to take notice of him, since they would then be considered equals. He began following the president, but before he could act out his plan, he was arrested on weapons charges and he was forced to go home once again. His mental state started to deteriorate even further, and he began studying the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy, believing this would help him with his new plan to assassinate then-President Ronald Reagan. Before going through with his plans, he wrote to Foster saying, quote, "The reason I'm going ahead with this attempt now is because I cannot wait any longer to impress you." And so, on March 30th, 1981, Hinckley waited outside the Hilton Hotel in Washington, armed with the revolver. As Reagan exited the hotel after a conference, he opened fire, wounding Reagan in the chest and injuring 3 others. Press Secretary James Brady, who was hit in the side of his head, would succumb to his injuries in 2014, and his death was ruled a homicide. Hinckley was wrestled to the ground and arrested, but he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He would later state that the assassination attempt was the greatest love offering in the history of the world. Number 3. In 2008, 19-year-old Tan Tak-soon was introduced to 20-year-old Chung Kar-yin by a mutual friend. The two hit it off, and less than a month later, they started dating. Tan was a welder from Malaysia who had traveled to Singapore for work, and Yin, also from Malaysia, was working as a waitress. On March 7th, 2009, the couple were at a local restaurant having dinner. Yin had a bowl of fishball noodles and realized that she'd not been given any chopsticks to eat with. She asked Tan to fetch some for her, but he refused, much to the frustration of his girlfriend. This caused an argument to break out, and the couple spent some time during their dinner ignoring each other. Tan tried to make amends by feeding Yin with his chopsticks, and this seemed to bring an end to the pointless scuffle. He became irritated once again, however, when Yin spent a lot of time talking and texting on her phone, and he decided it was better to take her home on his motorbike. After arriving at the apartment, the couple started arguing once more, and Yin asked Tan to follow her upstairs where they could continue talking in private. As they reached the 12th story corridor, the argument reached fever pitch when Yin told Tan that she didn't appreciate his quick temper and that she didn't believe he would ever change. This caused him to believe she was in the process of ending their relationship, and he pushed her over a low wall in the corridor, causing her to plummet 12 stories to her death. He then took a few steps backward, ran at the same wall, and threw himself over, believing that he would die as a result. As he fell, however, he struck scaffolding that had been erected due to the building's elevator being upgraded, and he survived. Thanks to an argument over chopsticks, Tan would be sentenced to 14 years in prison. Number 2. In 1976, Dana Sue Gray graduated high school in Newport, and she moved in with the skydiving instructor who helped her with her nursing school studies. She also took an interest in skydiving and soon became an expert. In 1981, she graduated from nursing school and started dating a windsurfer named Chris Dodson. This would be another sport that she excelled at, along with skydiving and golf, and the couple would often travel to Hawaii to pursue their hobbies. In 1987, however, she married Tom Gray, who she knew since high school, and shortly after they married, Dana fell into a large amount of debt. Thanks to the dispute over her aunt's will, she didn't have any contact with her family, and so she was unable to turn to them and ask for help. Further exasperating her financial woes, the couple's various business ventures failed to take off, and in 1993 they divorced. In September of that same year, she would file for bankruptcy, and 2 months later would be fired from her job as a labor and delivery nurse for misappropriating painkillers. Then on Valentine's Day of 1994, Norma Davis, the mother-in-law of Dana Gray's father's second wife, was attacked in her home. Her life ended by stab wounds to her neck and chest. No forced entry into her house was found, and friends told police that she always kept her door locked unless she was expecting company. The phone cord had been ripped out of the wall, and police found a Nike shoe print near the kitchen. Her body was found 2 days after the attack. 2 weeks later, June Roberts, age 66, was visited by Dana after she asked if she could borrow a book that could help her control her drinking problem. After letting Dana in, June searched for the book, and Dana unplugged June's phone, using the cord to strangle her. After ending her life, Dana searched the house and stole 2 credit cards, which she used to go on a shopping spree only an hour later. Less than a month later, Dana would stop at 87-year-old Dora Beeb's house to ask for directions. Dora invited her in to look at a map and was immediately attacked with a steam iron. Once again, less than an hour later, Dora's credit card was used for a shopping spree. Then, on March 10th, Dorinda Hawkins was attacked at an antique store where she worked. Dana pretended to be interested in a photo frame and attempted to strangle Dorinda with a phone cord. She stole $25 and Dorinda's credit card and went shopping, not knowing that her victim had survived. Dorinda gave a description to police, and 1 week later, Dana was arrested, stating that she committed the crimes in order to satiate her need to shop. She was sentenced to life in prison. Number 1. From his early adulthood, Richard Trenton Chase was a strange individual. He was a hypochondriac who would often state that his heart would stop beating on occasion and that his pulmonary artery had been stolen by someone. He would hold oranges on top of his head, reasoning that his brain could absorb vitamin C through diffusion. At one stage, he thought that the bones in his skull were separating, and he shaved off his hair so he could watch the process as it happened. He also believed that his own mother was attempting to poison him, prompting him to move into an apartment that he shared with friends. This did not last long, however, as his strange behavior, paired with his alcohol and drug addictions, was too much for his friends to bear. After Chase refused to leave the apartment, they decided to move out. But living alone in the apartment only caused Chase's behavior to get even stranger, and he began ingesting various raw animal parts, believing that it would keep his heart from shrinking. He developed a blood fixation, and in 1973, he spent some time in a psychiatric ward. In 1976, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but after receiving treatment, he was no longer considered to be dangerous and he was released into his mother's custody. Then, in 1977, things took a turn for the worse. On the 29th of December, Chase killed 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin in a drive-by shooting. On January 13th of the next year, he broke into the house of Teresa Wallen, who he also shot and killed, and 4 days later, he ended Evelyn Muroff and Danny Meredith's lives in Muroff's home, committing unspeakable acts after the fact due to his fixations. Police found perfect hand and shoe prints at the scene, quickly leading to his arrest. On May 8th of 1979, he was found guilty of 6 counts of murder and sentenced to be executed. In an interview with Robert Ressler, he would state that the murders were not his fault, and that if he hadn't committed the crimes, he would have died himself due to his blood turning to powder. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.